Hello and welcome back to the LRTV and the 5-cylinder Symphony. This is just an update and a few things we've been getting up to. Just a little bit of news. We've now managed to stack out 8 terabytes of video material and projects on these hard drives. You know that we have over the series of all the videos, I've shown you the toolboxes I've actually owned. This one here is my working toolbox, Snap-on toolbox. And it's a very nice and spacious toolbox with enough room for all of my working professional life tools. This also helps us in the LRTV when we're doing repairs and whatever. However, I've had to sell this because I'm still suffering from a broken ankle. It's actually a fractured ankle, so I have another month off. So this was the toolbox I had beforehand. I sold it on and now I've just bought it back for the same money. This unfortunately is in not very good condition, but I got it home, cleaned it, painted it, as you can see here, in olive drab with a satin finish. Now there's two prongs to this. Basically I needed the toolbox to look okay, and I'm practicing now to see what sort of paint blends I can get together. Riveted onto the side of the toolbox is a test piece of a checker plate that I painted earlier with satin black. And this is more or less a test piece at the moment to see what colours would blend well with our Land Rover Discovery. And believe me, satin black is not the best colour to choose. Now the paints I've got here, this is a QDP, quick drying paint at 75%. This has, after 4 attempts, given us a decent enough satin finish, which is gloss, not too high gloss, and not too matte. So you can see here, here's a heater box that I painted up as well at the same time I was doing the test piece. Now I'm basically happy with this because what we have here is the Land Rover components from the Defender. You can see, well, they're filthy at the moment, and they are going to blend in well with this mix of satin black, so I'm going to use this particular shade. Okay, we've got plenty of components on the Defender that will all be done in this sort of colour. I'm still contemplating whether to use the Buzzweld chassis in one black, which is supposed to be an OEM satin or matte. And you can see this is hand painted and the finish isn't very good, but does it matter if it's roadside? Anyway, this paint here, this again is a Mason's QDP, which is quick drying paint. It's a 1K, it's a once paint. Okay, now this olive drab satin BS298 colour is what the toolbox is painted in. You can see this. I don't know if the light's good enough to show you the full effect of the olive drab, but I'm happy with this colour, and I think we'll do our Discovery in this type of shade. Of course, with these paints you need synthetic thinners and an undercoat as well. This whole lot here cost about £70, so it's not cheap, but with patience and spraying instead of brush painting, the effects are pretty good. Now I'm still in a wheelchair and I can't put much weight on my leg for long periods of time, and yes, I'm still off work. So basically what I have here is an SIP, it's a fairly cheap spray gun. Components here, this is an air cap, this is what atomizes the paints. You have a fluid tip on the end there which lets the paint out when you pull the trigger, and you have a fluid needle. The needle you can pull out. I'll just get the spring out of the way first. You can pull the needle out, and of course if you need to clean your gun, this is what you'd be cleaning. This is HVLP, which means high volume, low pressure air gun. There are differences, of course. Now, this is the SIP one I've just showed you, or SIP Industrial Tools. You have an air control inlet. You have a fluid adjustment screw, which allows more or less paint to be let through the fluid nozzle. And basically, as a bit of advice that I've been told, is to let it most of the way out and wind it 2 turns back. This will give you the most amount of paint you can get through the fluid nozzle. Now on this side, this is the spreader control, and basically the shape of a fan. This is what will adjust it, and again I've been advised to wind it all the way out and a little bit back. For the paint pot here, this is an acetate one and it's gravity fed, and it also has a breather on the top there which you need. If it gets blocked, it's like a diesel tank, it will restrict the paint flow. on the air cap at the front here, it's adjustable in the way that you can either have your spread horizontal or you can turn it the other way and have it vertical, but when you're spraying it wants to be locked off. Okay, now fluid tips, they come in different sizes. Now this is marked as a 1.4. This is vitally important to know because the fluid tip size will determine what type of paint delivery there is. For instance, at the top, you can get 1.3, but 1.4 is base coating, solvent or water, lacquer and gloss colours. That's like top coats, etc. 1.6, thicker materials. 1.8 suits thicker commercial industrial materials, and the word primers here. 2.0 is ideal for high build primers, and 2.5 application of thick materials like polyester or even Raptor, for instance. This transport primer, which has a very high zinc content, would need something like a 1.8 fluid tip for spraying. Now what you get is a fairly thick coat of primer onto your surface. It was actually etch primed before I primered it, and the etch primer here is a lot thinner material. This is a 2K or a 2-pack etch primer from Tetraseal. This has a mixture 1:1 with activated thinner, as you can see here. Right, so this is a non-sand variety, which means you don't need to sand it down once it's been applied. And as I said, I used the 1.4 nozzle for painting the etch primer on that. Now that's about £60 from SRP Industrial Tools. Now this one I think cost about £10 from Lidl. This has a 3.0 fluid tip, which you can imagine is going to paint Raptor quite well. That is going to push that out of this gravity-fed gun and splatter something like this. Now I'm going to test this and see what effects we can get on it. But of course the Raptor will need to be thinned down to achieve the job. So hopefully you understand a little bit about fluid tip sizes, and a 3 will probably lash the paint out for doing something like a garden fence or painting a wall, but for car painting, vehicle painting, it's a waste of time even having one of these in your toolbox, so throw it away. A little bit of advice from a professional sprayer. He basically is saying don't buy anything for under £200. Now if you want to do a good finish on your vehicle, you need to use the right nozzles. You need to be able to have something that atomises the paint properly. DeVille Bliss does do very good guns, and I'll show you here that the difference between this and a cheap gun is you can actually get all the parts you need for your spray gun. So especially if you're going to spray a whole Land Rover and you want a good finish on it, then you're going to have to buy something like this, and it will serve you well for a long time. Otherwise just roller paint your vehicle. This sort of thing, like these gaskets, they do perish over time and cause problems with the gun, and you can get the bits for these easy. You can also buy replacement fluid tips if you want to change the size of them. Okay, so dropping onto the Frost website, I'm going to find in the menu somewhere down here. I'll just zoom in for you. Hang on, I'll get that back. We're looking at for spray guns and paint equipment. Now, there's a company in the United States called Eastwood, which are stonkingly good paint suppliers and equipment suppliers. And it seems that Frost has the supply for the UK. Now, there's a gun on here which has changeable fluid tips and fluid nozzles. Now, this is more economical because you'll be able to use one gun and use different fluid tips to get your job a lot better. I'll just try and zoom in on this a bit better. I know it's not very good because the it's a bit fuzzy, but there you go. You can see that has interchangeable fluid tips and needles. So it's just something to think about. You could shop about and find something like this. This is about 186 quid, which isn't too bad, to be honest with you. Right, so basically CFMs is another thing to consider. This is the volume, not the pressure. So I'll show here with a spray gun. Alright, it actually should be something around 20. Well, I'm going to set it to 30 psi. I'll just give you a little tip here actually. When you set a spray gun, pull the trigger and then set the pressure. Now these work from 20 to 35 psi, which is very low pressure, but it's actually the volume of air it goes through. which is CFM, and you have to be aware of this. Also, just advise that you need somewhere to hang your spray gun. Right, so if we look at a DeVille Bliss site, and that's a Devil Abyss for some reason, so corresponding CFM's 9 to 11 or 13. So you need an air compressor capacity that's going to deliver that constantly. You can see that there, yeah. Okay, so here's a heads up for Fun Rover again. He's actually done a little piece on setting up for spraying, how you set your compressor up, and then setting up a condenser where you can clean your air and get the moisture out of it. This video is worth watching if you're going to set yourself up with a spray system. I'd highly advise that you go and watch this video first before you think about painting.